You think you want freedom. You think freedom is sitting around doing whatever you want, whenever you want. That's not freedom. That's slavery in disguise. Real freedom, real power only comes through discipline. Waking up when you said you would, training when you don't feel like it, working when everyone else is sleeping. Every second you give in to weakness. You sell a piece of your life to mediocrity. You betray yourself. You were not born to be average. You were not born to coast. Deep down you know it. Deep down you can feel the best version of you stronger, smarter, faster clawing to get out. But you will never meet him if you keep choosing comfort over greatness. Discipline is the bridge. Pain is the price. Freedom is the reward. Discipline isn't some fancy word you sprinkle into your motivational quotes. It's the ironclad rule that separates the dreamers from the doers, the enslaved from the free. Every shortcut you chase, every comfort you cling to, is a betrayal of your potential. You live in a world sold on the promise of quick fixes, get rich overnight, build muscle with a pill, learn languages in a weekend. Those lies are clever traps designed to keep you small, to make you dependent, to harvest your hope and spit out your ambition. Real power isn't doled out by fairy godmothers or found in the back of hustle porn videos. It's forged in the furnace of consistency, sweat, and sacrifice. Think about a champion athlete. They don't wake up one morning and decide they're invincible. They earn it by dragging themselves out of bed for brutal training sessions, by choosing protein over pastries, by memorizing every angle and repetition until perfection isn't just a goal but a reflex. They don't negotiate with their bodies or their schedules. Discipline demands obedience, and obedience is the only currency that buys the ticket to freedom. Those muscles, that speed, that unwavering confidence, they aren't products of talent alone. They're monuments built on disciplined habits stacked day after day. When you see them standing on the podium, you're witnessing the result of 1,000 mornings they didn't sleep in, 1,000 workouts they didn't skip, 1,000 temptations they didn't surrender to. Now look at the men and women who live tethered to their desires, who chase pleasure like it's going out of style. They think freedom is the ability to binge, watch, to scroll endlessly, to spend money they don't have on experiences that numb them for a few hours before the emptiness returns. They think power is the number of followers, the size of their paycheck, the endorsements they collect. But when you're a slave to your impulses, your phone, your appetite, your ego, you're chained tighter than any prison bars could ever hold you. True freedom doesn't come from indulging every whim. It comes from ruling over your own will. It's waking up before dawn because you chose to, not because you have to. It's sitting at your desk on a Saturday, grinding through another project, because you understand that every sacrifice today multiplies your choices tomorrow. You've been lied to by gurus selling magic beans. There is no growth without discomfort, no victory without struggle, no freedom without discipline. It's not sexy to talk about waking up at 4:30 a.m., but neither is living a life where you surrender control to your fleeting feelings. Feeling tired, sore, unmotivated, good. Those feelings are your gauge. If you never hit resistance, you never force your mind and body to adapt. Every time you push through the resistance, you carve out more room for yourself to breathe, to think, to act. Discipline isn't punishment. It's love for yourself so fierce that you refuse to let laziness steal your dreams. Imagine a life where you answer only to your highest standards. You prioritize growth over gratification, purpose over pleasure, long-term gain over momentary ease. In that life, failure isn't a dead end, it's feedback. Discipline teaches you to learn faster, to rise quicker, to iterate ruthlessly. You start viewing obstacles not as threats, but as invitations to demonstrate your resilience. That's power. The power to look at a wall and see it for what it is. A chance to hone your tools, to test your resolve, to prove to yourself that you belong on the other side. There will always be temptations, distractions, voices telling you to slow down, to enjoy life. But ask yourself, what enjoyment comes from knowing you settled? What thrill is greater than the adrenaline surge when you realize you've pushed further than you ever thought possible? Discipline sharpens you. It refines your character. It stacks your days into a ladder leading higher than comfort ever could. And that ladder is the only bridge to real freedom. Anyone promising you otherwise is selling a mirage. Your only choice is to step into the grind, to build momentum with every disciplined act, to harness your will until it becomes unstoppable. That is the truth they won't advertise, but it's the only truth that matters if you're serious about becoming the architect of your own destiny. Comfort is a beautiful lie. It whispers sweet nothings in your ear, convincing you that every extra minute in bed, every skipped workout, every just this once, indulgence won't matter. It tells you that rest is the reward, not the reset. But rest without rigor is a death sentence for your potential. Laziness, that silent accomplice of comfort, creeps in like a thief in the night, stealing your willpower drop by drop until you wake up years later wondering where your ambition went. You think you're relaxing, but you're rotting. Every time you choose ease over effort, you handcuff yourself to mediocrity. You trade tomorrow's victories for today's fleeting pleasures, never realizing that real triumph demands discomfort, and that comfort and laziness are the world's oldest and deadliest traps, engineered to keep you weak. Most people don't crash and burn in a spectacular blaze. They wither quietly, convinced they're fine because they haven't faced a crisis yet. They streamline their days around minimizing friction. The elevator instead of the stairs, the drive through instead of the kitchen, the binge session instead of the challenge. Each shortcut on its own seems harmless, but shortcuts have a funny way of turning into dead ends. You'll start believing you deserve comfort, that you're entitled to take the path of least resistance. Then one day you wake up and ask yourself why your dreams feel so distant, why your reflection in the mirror seems smaller, why the world is passing you by. The answer is always the same. You let comfort and laziness build a fortress around your ambition. Laziness doesn't arrive announcing its intentions. It sneaks in dressed as convenience. It convinces you that discipline is drudgery, that structure is stifling, that effort is optional. But discipline is the engine. Laziness is the handbrake. When you surrender to laziness, you're choosing to drag your own life behind you. You trade the freedom of achievement for the slavery of excuse making. You'll find yourself scrolling through other people's success instead of creating your own, envying the winners rather than becoming one. And deep down you know it's your fault. Not some cosmic injustice, not a lack of opportunity, but your own choice to remain comfortable. That realization is the most brutal discomfort of all. Every day you cling to comfort, you dilute your strength. In the moment it feels like safety. No risks, no errors, no pain. But safety is an illusion. Every untested skill fades, every unchallenged muscle atrophies, every unused muscle of willpower withers. Discomfort is the thermostat of growth. Without it, you stagnate. You become a shadow of the person you could be. Imagine a warrior who never picks up a sword, a musician who never touches an instrument, an entrepreneur who never faces rejection. They're just actors on a stage, playing at life. The real performers are the ones who lean into discomfort, who welcome the burn, who know that every ounce of resistance they overcome steels them for the next battle. They don't fear discomfort, they hunt it. You owe yourself more than a life padded with easy choices and empty comforts. Deep inside, you have a voice screaming for more intensity, more challenge, more purpose. That voice is your untapped power, your dormant greatness. It's been buried under blankets of laziness and pillows of convenience, but it's still screaming to be heard. You can let it fade, or you can answer the call. Tear down the fortress of comfort you've built around yourself. Embrace the friction of discipline. Chase the kind of pain that forges champions. Only then will you taste true freedom. The freedom that comes from knowing you refuse to stay small, that you refuse to bow to laziness, that you refuse to die comfortable. You don't get handed freedom on a silver platter. You have to snatch it with clenched fists and unbreakable will. Every person alive walks around believing in the fairy tale that freedom is something you stumble into, like finding a forgotten treasure chest buried in the backyard. In reality, freedom is forged in the crucible of self-control. It isn't a gift from fate or fortune. It is the relentless result of mastering your own impulses day after day, moment after moment. When you refuse to let your cravings dictate your actions, you start building the fortress that no one else can breach. Self-control isn't some vague philosophy you meditate on. It is a raw, unfiltered force you exercise. Every time you wake up before your alarm, every time you push through fatigue instead of giving in, you're flexing the muscle of your willpower. That muscle grows stronger with use, but it's also easily injured by neglect. Skip one workout and you create a crack. Give in to one weak moment and the next temptation looks twice as alluring. You must treat self-control like your most valuable asset, guarding it, training it, refusing to squander even a drop of it on trivial pleasures. Temptations are everywhere. Your phone buzzing with notifications, your stomach begging for instant gratification, your mind whispering excuses. But every time you resist that ping, every time you choose a glass of water over a soda, every time you sit down to work instead of scrolling, you're banking freedom for the future. The small victories compound. A week of resisting sweets turns into a month turns into a year, and before you know it, you're not that same person who indulged without thought. You're someone who answers only to their higher standards. In the early hours when the world is still asleep, champions are out there hammering their bodies, training their minds, scripting their destinies. They're not doing it because it's comfortable. They're doing it because they know comfort steals freedom. That 5 a.m. run, that extra set when your muscles scream, that decision to study instead of partying, all of it is self-control in action, and with every disciplined act, you're carving out a life that no one can take away from you. You become the author of your fate rather than a character in someone else's story. Emotions will try to derail you. Fear will tell you to back off. Doubt will suggest you're not cut out for greatness. Anger will derail your focus. Self-control doesn't mean you ignore your emotions. It means you dictate how you respond to them. When anxiety strikes, you don't scroll through social media to numb yourself. You breathe, you focus on the task. You prove that you're the boss of your own mind. That moment of restraint when your heart races and your palms sweat, that's where freedom is born. The power to choose your actions over your feelings. That's the real emancipation. Financial freedom works the same way. It isn't inherited or won in a lottery. It's earned by the discipline to save when the temptation is to spend, to invest when the fear is to hoard cash under your mattress. Every dollar you resist wasting on impulse buys becomes a soldier in your army of autonomy, fighting for your future security. You don't let bills dictate your lifestyle. Your self-control shapes your reality. The more you demonstrate control over your finances, the less money controls you. Relationships demand the same standard. You don't let your ego lash out in arguments. You don't let jealousy poison your trust. You don't let impatience ruin your conversations. You exercise self-control by listening more than you speak, by keeping your pride in check, by responding instead of reacting. That restraint builds respect, loyalty, and genuine connection. It proves that you're strong enough to handle your feelings without letting them handle you. Learning and growth require brutal self-control. You resist the urge to quit when the material gets tough, when progress slows, when success seems out of reach. You discipline yourself to read another page, practice another drill, refine another skill. You understand that mastery is not a destination but an endless pursuit, one that demands unwavering self-control every step of the way. You don't flinch at the prospect of failure because you know failure itself is a product of undisciplined effort. Every moment you exercise self-control, You're taking ownership of your life. You're tearing down the chains of distraction, addiction, and laziness. You're proving that you answer to a higher standard than fleeting desire. Those who believe freedom is granted will always remain submissive to their own weaknesses. Those who know freedom is earned through self-control stand tall, unbreakable, the architects of their own destiny. You were not born to float along in the shallow end of life, bobbing on the surface while the currents carry you nowhere. You owe it to yourself to demand more than mediocrity, to stare down that comfortable plateau and tear it down with your bare hands. Mediocrity is the silent killer of dreams, the anesthetic that numbs ambition until you no longer recognize the roar that once burned in your chest. Every compromise you make, every excuse you fashion, every moment you settle for good enough, chips away at your potential. You owe it to yourself to reject that slow bleed, to reject the complacency that masquerades as convenience. Look around at the world. You see men and women content to trade their lives for paycheck existence, to clock in and clock out, to spend their evenings chasing ephemeral pleasures rather than forging something lasting. They're made to feel safe in the middle of the pack, to believe safety is success. But safety is the coffin of greatness. Demanding more than mediocrity means embracing the discomfort of the unknown, the disapproval of complacent peers, the sting of relentless effort. It means raising your personal standards so high that anything less becomes unacceptable. You owe it to yourself to understand that excellence isn't born of talent alone, but of relentless, never-ending pursuit. No one wakes up one morning fully formed as a legend. Legends are forged in the fires of discipline, tempering their resolve with every setback, refining their craft in the quiet hours when no one is watching. When you demand more than mediocrity, you refuse to let missed rehearsals or half-hearted attempts define you. You learn faster, adapt smarter, push harder. You recognize that every failure is just data, valuable information that tells you how to come back stronger, sharper, more prepared for the next challenge. Demanding more is not about setting lofty goals you'll never reach. It's about defining a baseline so high that you're always climbing. It's deciding that lifting weights once a week won't cut it, that showing up half-heartedly to your own life is a betrayal of your capacity. It's choosing to read while others scroll, to practice instead of partying, to invest in yourself when your friends are spending on fleeting thrills. It's the quiet moments of choice that stack up into a life of distinction, that separate winners from wanderers. When you demand more than mediocrity, you also demand accountability. You refuse to blame the economy, your upbringing, the government, or anyone else for your shortcomings. You look in the mirror and see the only obstacle between you and your dreams. That realization is terrifying, but also liberating, because if you alone are responsible, then you alone hold the power to change. You can outwork, outthink, outlast. You can rewrite your story with the ink of discipline and the margins of unrelenting action. Demanding more means demanding respect, from yourself first, and then from the world. You refuse to be swayed by the noise of critics who have never dared to leave their comfort zones. You know that respect isn't given. It's earned by consistency in thought, word, and deed. When you set a higher bar, you no longer tolerate half measures in your relationships, your work, or your goals. You hold yourself to promises you make at 5 a.m. in the dark when no one else is holding you to them. That integrity becomes your signature, your unspoken message to the world that you are not to be underestimated. Make no mistake, demanding more is a lonely path. Many will label you as unreasonable, stubborn, or obsessed. They'll ask you to slow down, to enjoy life, to take it easy. But what they really fear is the light you shine on their own compromises. Every time you refuse to settle, you remind them of what they once promised themselves and then abandon. You become the mirror in which they see their own unfulfilled potential. Their discomfort is your confirmation. You are moving in the right direction. So ask yourself right now, do you value comfort over conquest? Do you prefer fleeting validation over the hard-earned pride of accomplishment? Do you see life as something to be endured or something to be dominated? You owe it to yourself to choose domination, to demand more than mediocrity? To let that demand be the spark that ignites every action you take, every decision you make, every goal you set. There is no halfway. There is no compromise. There is only the relentless pursuit of the extraordinary. Deep inside you lies a version of yourself so fierce and untamed that it scares you, because it refuses to bow to comfort, to whispers of doubt, to the illusion that you're already enough. That version waits patiently behind every moment of pain you endure, every sacrifice you make, every act of discipline you enforce. Pain isn't your enemy. It's the hammer striking at your weaknesses, melting away the impurities until only hardened steel remains. Every drop of sweat, every clenched jaw, every muscle trembling under the weight of challenge is a payment on the debt you owe to your future self. You feel the burn, the sting, the ache, and you learn that each sensation is a sign that you're alive, that you're growing, that you're chipping away at the ceiling you once thought was your limit. Sacrifice is the torch that lights your path through darkness. It demands you trade in short-lived pleasures for long, lasting gains. Friends who complain about early mornings will never understand why you set your alarm for dawn. Family dinners and late nights out become choices weighed against your ambition. You discover that saying no tastes bitter at first, but its aftertaste is victory. Every choice to skip the easy route compounds into an advantage so subtle that only hindsight can reveal it. You sacrifice social media scrolling for reading a page that enriches your mind. You sacrifice a few hours of sleep for the discipline to create or train or learn. Those sacrifices aren't losses. They're investments in the equity of your soul equity you'll draw on when the stakes are highest and the world demands your absolute best. Discipline is the quiet engine running behind every success story. It doesn't flash its lights or shout its presence. It simply hums in the background, keeping you on track when motivation falters. Motivation is fickle. One day it waves a flag, the next it vanishes like mist. But discipline is a contract you sign with yourself and renew each morning. When fatigue clouds your judgment, discipline cuts through the fog. When distractions scream for your attention, discipline locks the doors. When fear tries to paralyze your progress, discipline forces your feet to move. It's the daily habit of showing up, of honoring the commitments you made in private, of refusing to let your word to yourself be another broken promise. In those moments, when you choose the plan over the impulse, you're not just following rules, you're proving that your potential is non-negotiable. You'll learn that pain, sacrifice, and discipline aren't isolated challenges but intertwined allies. Pain teaches you where your limits lie. Sacrifice shows you what you value most. Discipline transforms knowledge into action, turning intention into reality. There's a rhythm to the process. You face pain, answer it with discipline, bolster that discipline with the sacrifices you're willing to make, and emerge tougher, wiser, hungrier. The cycle repeats, each revolution forging a stronger version of you. Over time, you'll notice the small victories stacking up, a habit mastered, a fear confronted, a goal achieved. They accumulate until they become impossible to ignore, and suddenly you're no longer the person who once feared pain or trembled at sacrifice or doubted discipline. Others will look at you and see only the results, your confidence, your strength, your achievements. They'll assume you were born that way, but they won't see the nights you chose the grind over the pillow, the meals you skipped to honor your meal plan, the temptations you denied when no one was watching. They won't see the silent contracts you drafted with yourself in moments of solitude, vowing to never settle for less than your best. They won't feel the echoes of every rep, every deadline met, every temptation resisted. Echoes that shaped you into someone who no longer fears challenge but seeks it out. The best version of you isn't a badge you pin on and forget about. It's a continual unveiling, a living work in progress, sculpted by the tools of pain, sacrifice, and discipline. Each day you choose discomfort over ease, you chip away at the old you, revealing something stronger, sharper, more resilient beneath. It's not a destination you reach, it's a mountain you climb one ruthless step at a time, and at every foothold as you push upward, you glimpse what you were meant to be, and you realize that the journey itself is the proof of your greatness.